It's 2019. Humanity is flourishing. We're at the pinnacle of society. A year where alliances were formed.
How dare you!
A year of great learning and understanding. Nature is finally healing. A new art renaissance has begun. But more importantly, it was a prosperous year for gamers.
Bravo 6. Going dog.
There were game-changing experiences like Anthem.
What the hell is even that?
And Far Cry New Dawn were thrust into the world. And amongst the jumble sale bin of games, a little game produced by Remedy Entertainment would arrive. A revered company responsible for god-tier games like Max Payne and Alan Wake.
Nice.
Their last game, Quantum Break, didn't fare too good. Great reviews and fun core gameplay. Integration of TV into a game? Interesting. No one buys it. People think it's stinky and kinda weird. Don't worry fellas, next time I'm sure it'll be different. Production begins in 2016 for their next game, codename P7. After blood, sweat, and tears, it's done. It's finally done. It's go time, boys. The team gets to work marketing on YouTube, TV ads, and even children. Before the game is released, the reviews are in. Good news, 9 out of 10s. Good job fellas. August 27th, Remedy releases the game into the wild. Nobody buys it. No one really even knows it exists. Remedy is sad. But why? Why did a game with glowing reviews from an esteemed company flat out fail to garner the attention it deserved? Now, I'm not saying no one played this game, because plenty people have, but the amount of people who haven't played the game or still have no fucking clue this game exists is, well, staggering. Well, I'm here today to first break down the story, its themes, and that's why it was forgotten. Oh, and
smash that like button.
Control is an iceberg that goes pretty fucking deep. Now, below the surface of the third-person shooter is a supernatural action experience, and under that, at depths near the Marianas Trench, is a game that attempts to tackle theological, parapsychological, and philosophical ideas.
I don't even know what that means.
Now, this is where this iceberg may have sunk some people's ships quicker than the Titanic.
I'm under the water. Please help me.
But Control has a through line, so don't worry, the story can be easily followed along with, despite the absurdity all around in it.
Push the fingers through the surface into the wet. What the hell?
So, like any good piece of media with layers, players are allowed to peel back each layer with their own discretion. Now, if you just want to look at this as a science fiction shooter where you follow a woman battling unknown forces, well, you can. But if you want to peel back the poster and see what's behind, well, this is where things get interesting. Now, with all that bullshit being said, let's start off with a bombshell, shall we? Control's main themes are in part thanks to psychologist Carl Jung. What the fuck? I know, this guy. Yeah, literally this guy. Yeah, the guy who went mad to understand madness. So, this shit's about to get weird.
Hold on to your butts.
To even comprehend what the hell is even going on here, you need to understand the story before the story. Also, many of these are just theories cobbled together through fans, collectibles, and videos, so don't take it all as gospel, shall we?
Okay.
First time playthrough, Control will throw a lot of weird terminology at you, and it will most likely leave you confused as Tom Cruise's sexuality, so let's understand the basics of Control before we start the story, well as basic as Control can be. Now, we begin here. This right here is not my pretty boy swag. It is the oldest house. The building is home to the FBC, or the Federal Bureau of Control. Now, this sounds like a stereotypical PSYOP bad Big Brother secret organization.
No!
But no, not really. They're kinda like if Fox Mulder took over the FBI.
Do you think I'm spooky?
So, what exactly does this FBC actually do? Well, simply put, the FBC is a secret organization of the US government that contains, researches, and controls paranatural occurrences that have seeped into our world. And believe me, it's definitely not the SCP. Now, what the fuck is a paranatural phenomena? Well, kind viewer, according to Remedy, it can be anything from events, objects, realms, dimensions that violate the laws of our known nature and reality. So simply put, it's just when stuff is weird and no one really knows why. Now, for example, why would an everyday object have paranatural abilities? Well, first off, there will be two types of objects. There are altered items and objects of power. In Control's universe, they are two very similar things, but ultimately very, very different. Let's start with the altered items. These are archetypal objects that have been given power during supernatural events through the collective unconscious. Yes, I hear you ask, what the hell does that mean? Okay, hang on. Sounds weird, but it's pretty simple. And that's where this Carl Jung guy comes into play. For example, stigmas and cultural associations that humanity has attached to objects can result in those items manifesting unique powers, meaning that humans' collective imagination only exacerbates details with paranatural realities just waiting to manifest. These details in the minds of humans have been given strength through belief, like an urban myth or a pop culture, where objects of power are basically the same, but are more powerful with powers that can be wielded by peri-utilitarians. Basically people with supernatural abilities. So we talked about objects, what about these supernatural events, huh? Well, they're simply called altered world events. This is simply paranatural forces, energies, resonances seeping into our known reality. These paradimensional events greatly disturb our own perceived reality with usually, let's say, catastrophic consequences. This is where our FBC comes in to save the day. They attempt to contain these events, artifacts, and really anything else to be researched in the oldest house. Now, more weird shit. The oldest house, not a building. It's what the FBC calls a place of power. Now, I hear you.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
What in God's earth does that even mean? It's a place where logic acts independently to our own perceived reality, basically ignoring laws, physics, and everything we really know. Sounds like an AWE, but it's less volatile and more of a place, not an event. Now, I hear you asking, why the hell would a federal bureau move into an interdimensional threshold? Well, in 1964, when investigating an AWE in New York, they kinda stumbled on it, and that's eventually where they would just move in.
This place is great! When can we move in?
They were like, yeah, let's go in there, that sounds great, fuck it. There's demons coming through the walls, I'm about it.
This is preposterous.
So why or how any of this stuff happens, nobody knows. The FBC doesn't know, they're just flying by the seat of their pants. Now, as you would have guessed, the house is quite old.
I'm too old for this shit.
And once believed to be, believe it or not, a magical giant tree. Now, this place of power can alter its appearance, with the inner walls being a never-ending shifting maze, constantly changing its structure inside. So how the fuck do you control that? Well, the seemingly infinite building is controlled through synchronistic control points. Carl Jung. So, not only is the building in constant flux, it's a threshold or gateway to other dimensions.
That's insane.
This happens when the resonant frequencies of Earth match other dimensions and a bridge can open. Now, the oldest house isn't the only threshold on Earth, with the FBC believing Earth itself is just another threshold connected to the oldest house, which is actually just rooted in some other reality. Is it the weird shit like the altered items and objects of power inside the walls causing gateways to open? Well, the FBC's answer is,
I don't know.
all this weird shit and the game hasn't even started yet, so let's start this shit, shall we?
Now let's do this!
We begin, it's a dark and stormy night, and our protagonist Jesse is in search of her long-lost brother Dylan. He's bald. Jesse has been led to the death trap we know as the oldest house by an unseen benevolent force guiding her in. And when she gets there, and just like my 12th birthday, it's completely devoid of any life.
Happy birthday?
The building is in a lockdown. Upon investigation, Jesse stumbles upon one lone soul, a lonely janitor named Artie. Right out the gates, this guy right here, he's not a janitor. He's most likely a god, or something we perceive as a god. In Finnish mythology, Artie is the name of the god of the sea. With Remedy's other games bring up the cosmic sea. Perhaps this janitor cleans up the messes of the universe? It's a pretty big ask of a janitor, if you ask me. Anyway, Artie, the homeboy, leads the confused Jesse to the oldest house, to the interview for the janitor's assistant. This is where she stumbles upon the former director Trench has done diddly gone done and accidentally unalived himself. But why? It's a mystery.
Jinkies!
And next to the director's body lies maybe the most powerful of all objects of power. The service weapon, a weapon known by many names: Excalibur, Mjolnir, the intervention from Modern Warfare 2. So, just like the oldest house, the weapon has had many forms. Now, upon touching the service weapon, Jesse is translocated to a realm of a white void called the Astral Plane. Now, this is where the titular board lies. They kind of oversee the FBC, and are kind of extra-dimensional beings that seem to control the Astral Plane and the objects of power. And they broadcast telepathically through the black pyramid that lies in the astral plane. They speak only gibberish, with the director being the only one to decipher their language, making the director an extension of the board, helping the board exert their control over the FBC. The board, the service weapon, oldest house, the black pyramid, all linked. And with that, the board has deemed Jesse worthy to wield the service weapon and in turn become the new FBC director. It's here that Jesse encounters the hostile force that has caused this lockdown, the Hiss. Well, don't really have a fucking name, but Jesse calls them the Hiss. They have kicked down the metaphorical door to the house and are ready to fuck things up. The Hiss is a hostile resonant entity, a sound that infects most of the entire FBC. A continuous haunting incantation deafens the entire oldest house. This resonance possesses humans inside the oldest house, using the desk jockeys to amplify the signal, while others with combat experiences are used to destroy anything that gets in their way. And with the Hiss's mere presence, it negatively affects the house and all the items housed inside.
What is going on here?
Oh, and that benevolent force that helped Jesse into the oldest house, well, that's called Polaris. It's the antithesis of the Hiss. It's also a resident entity, but it's not evil. And with Polaris's help, Jesse is able to find a few remaining survivors that were able to avoid corruption from the Hiss with the use of a wearable device called an HRA that was created by a missing Dr. Darling. From here, Jesse, not ready to be a director of a bureau, is almost reluctantly embarking on a journey to cleanse the oldest house of the Hiss and find her long-lost brother, Dylan. Where, after a few missions, we learn more about Jesse and her backstory with the bureau. She discovers her brother Dylan has been held in a containment sector in the Panopticon, a prison-like structure created by the father of utilitarianism in real life, Jeremy Bentham, with it being a symbol of, you guessed it, control. A very fitting structure. But, unfortunately, he's welcomed the Hiss, hoping they will help free him from imprisonment from the Bureau. And here is where Jesse learns that her past is intertwined with the present. Jesse and Dylan were once involved in a massive AWE in their hometown of Ordinary, where they found a slide projector and 8 slides amongst the rubble of the town dump. And yes, that is where they played apparently. This is what the normal kids do.
That's all I have to say about that.
But however, this in turn allowed them to traverse different dimensions, with the most important of the slides being slide 36, where Jesse and Dylan encountered their benevolent force, Polaris. But as you would guess, not all the slides are benign, with hostile forces leaking out of the other slides, causing an event that led to all the adults of Ordinary to disappear without a trace. with Jesse and Dylan and a couple other kids being the only survivors, and with Polaris' help, Jesse was able to shut off the slide projector and burn every slide, besides Polaris, of course.
Of course!
And oh yes, here comes the FBC coming in to save the day and clean up the mess. The FBC was monitoring the situation, had come in to contain the slide projector and slides and any humans caught up in the event. However, Jesse was able to escape with the help of Polaris, where Dylan was captured, feeling betrayed by Polaris, who feels has abandoned him. Upon custody and learning of his powers, Dylan, now codenamed P6, began to be groomed to be the next director under the Prime Candidate program. While although Jesse was able to escape the AWE horrors, the FBC had been keeping a close eye on Jesse, also codenaming her P7, making her feel paranoid and always watched. And just like his sister, Dylan also possesses supernatural abilities, but is deemed too dangerous to be left unsupervised by the FBC.
I'm really mad.
Where he is unable to control his power and rage like most men. But in the current timeline, he has escaped containment. Oh dear. But he has voluntarily surrendered to the FBC, where he is promptly contained in a cell. Upon years of searching, praying to any god that'll listen, Jesse finally finds her brother, but he's corrupted by the hiss. But somehow, because of his abilities, is somewhat still able to break through the hiss control. And as we know, things always come full circle, and yeah, the source of the hiss comes from the very same slide projector that caused her so much pain before. Where now she goes on a crazy acid trip through hell to find the dimensional research sector where the slide projector is housed. The maze was created by the former director Trench with the help of the ashtray object of power to safeguard dimensional research in the slide projector. And somehow Jesse is actually able to traverse the never-ending maze of fucking hell with the help of Artie gifting his cassette player to Jesse. Don't know how that works, it just does, don't ask questions. Where reaching the sector and learning more of the mysterious disappearance of Dr. Darling.
Oh my.
Upon expeditions into the slide, Dr. Darling encountered the benevolent entity in which he calls Hedron, where he then brought Hedron into the oldest house where Polaris was able to enter the dimension using Hedron as a resonant point, and with proximity and more investigation into Hedron, Dr. Darling became obsessed with Hedron's teachings.
I'm never going home.
With Dr. Darling's new crazed demeanor, it started to alarm Director Trench, with Hedron beginning to teach Darling about the looming threat of the hiss, hence his creation of the HRAs to help combat the hiss in his final days at the FBC, where secretly a sneaky Director Trench had taken a half-burned slide.
I am very, very sneaky, sir.
With many years and years, slowly, the hiss were beginning to corrupt the director, manipulating him into believing Hedron and the HRAs was a greater threat to the FBC and eventually opened the portal for the hiss to enter our dimension. Upon learning this revelation, Jesse encounters the Hedron Resonance Lab where Darling exposed himself to Hedron.
Gay!
And like that disappeared, with Polaris guiding her into the chamber, which in turn allows the hiss to infiltrate it and destroy Hedron. Why Polaris did it is a kind of a mystery. But with the Hedron destroyed and no resonance to combat the hiss, they finally burrow into Jesse's mind. And like that, our hero has fallen. The game ends. Roll credits. Just kidding, they pulled a Dead Space 2. It's not over yet, boys. The hiss entraps Jesse in a loop or hell or whatever you want to call it. But with the help of Artie and her astral plane Dr. Darling, Jesse finally takes back control, finding Polaris within herself, now becoming the new resonant point. After overcoming the hiss's control, Jesse discovers Dylan and the hiss attempting to take over the astral plane. And let me tell you, the boy's not happy.
You had best unfuck yourself or I will unscrew your head and check down your neck!
Our valiant hero fights off the hiss and finally cleanses Dylan of the hiss. At the same time, the HRAs begin to channel through Jesse as the new point of resonance. Jesse is able to cleanse the hiss from her brother, but unfortunately leaves him in a bit of a coma. But she now at least comes to terms with her new position as director of the FBC. Jesse, still leaving the building in lockdown, aims to clear the remnants of the hiss inside, making sure those bad boys don't get outside. A few questions are still lingering. Why did Trench take his own life? Well, it's theorized that maybe he did it because he realized what he finally did, or because the service weapon deemed him unworthy anymore to wield it. We also learn later in DLCs that the board's probably a little evil and maybe a little parasitic on the oldest house, with obviously Jesse growing suspicious of them. We learn of the Black Pyramid imagery throughout the FBC is more than a mere image, learning that its incorporation to the FBC happens only after the FBC discovered the oldest house and the board, was only added to the logo after the first director found the board and service weapon, where it was incorporated into the logo and symbols everywhere throughout the oldest house. With the symbol everywhere, it feeds into the collective unconscious of the FBC and almost a form of worship, which in turn feeds the board, making them powerful. And notice how these omniscient beings don't help with any other sort of infestation like the mold. They're only worried about the Hiss who are attempting to take control of the astral plane. They don't give a shit about the FBC. Trust me, that was probably a lot to digest, so let's just take a breather. Look at this puppy. Aww. So, even though there are interdimensional beings and possessed objects, but at its core it's an office building. Humans are there just doing their day-to-day mundane jobs, copying paper, faxing things, business stuff. It's just another day at the office for most people. Except in this universe, if your boss is running around and doing parkour, it's pretty normal. Parkour! And if they wield a gun, again, it's your average day. But like any other boring office job, the FBC have rules and regulations, except if you accidentally bring something home from a day at the office, it may turn out to be an unaltered item that flies around hitting you in the fucking head. Now, Control takes influences from every aspect of every media and molds them into its very own. It's got a very Ghostbuster feel to it, and not that they're capturing paranormal things and storing them. It's the fact that a majority of the schlubby people in the FBC are not heroes, they're just doing their jobs for money, kinda just trying to figure out problems arising.
What about the Twinkie?
And it'd be impossible to talk about Control's influences without seeing its clear inspirations from SCP, a parallel foundation that captures, contains, and researches anomalies like altered items, with Control's framework based heavily on the SCP lore, but somehow seems more linked to Twin Peaks. You have imagery that resembles the Black and White Lodge, the FBC, FBI, how humor and horror intertwine, unseen forces that can't be explained, horrific imagery that lingers, with even Jung's archetype of shadow reflecting on the doppelgangers explored in Twin Peaks. But above all, David Lynch's influence on Control can be traced back to his absurd, surrealist style integrated with realistic situations through his unique lens with the thoughts of consciousness and dreams on full display. The aesthetics of the game's world is heavily influenced by Cold War visuals, cassette futurism, and brutalist architecture. Is not only mesmerizing art style to look at, but it also serves a purpose to the lore of Control. The reason the FBC have to use dated equipment is that smartphones, modern equipment, current technology hasn't really been accepted into the human's collective unconscious yet, meaning the oldest house just really doesn't know how to deal with them yet.
Don't get it.
So just like Lucy from Twin Peaks, it doesn't understand cell phones and sure as shit doesn't like them. Remedy has thought about every gameplay aspect and every little minute detail. At its core, it's a fun, supernatural third-person shooter linked into Remedy's expanded universe. It's fun, it gives the player agency, you can explore Control at your own will, discover weird shit about the house and the FBC. The game though doesn't hold your hand, it can be challenging and sometimes very frustrating. Don't get me started on that anchor boss, needing you to expand your arsenal and abilities to survive. The game's health mechanic is similar to that of Doom Eternal, forcing you to engage your enemy to receive health. There's no hiding here, baby. And with Remedy being no stranger to third-person shooters, they still incorporate their near flawless shooting mechanics. No need to explain that, that was perfected already in the Max Payne games.
You're goddamn right.
You can interact with nearly every aspect of the world, crash through desks, flinging shit around. Everything feels very tangible. The story is engaging. When the game answers one question, it leads to more questions. It's fun to learn about the world that Control has built. Not to mention, it's fucking scary. You are constantly surrounded by demonic chants from dead bodies, constantly everywhere, bathed in an ominous red glow that comes straight from Suspiria. I mean, there's a fucking fridge with a pretty pissed off ethereal entity inside. There's Last of Us infected in the basement. You get the idea. But it's also extremely satirical and fucking funny. You learn of the tribulations of the office workers, constantly having their desks disappear, asking why there's a massive furnace that demands human sacrifice, and for some reason sticky notes duplicating in someone's office. Seriously, just try and imagine doing your work and your fucking desk is just floating away, or if you're just trying to take a piss and you come back and you're a whole nother dimension. It just has a well-balanced tone of action and supernatural horror with moments of levity. So it's no surprise it won IGN Game of the Year, Game Informer Game of the Year, and countless more. So why the hell does this game not have a following that it so rightly deserves? Well, kind viewer, let's have a little look-see at the evidence, shall we? First off, Control, although being a great title and analogy for the game, it's just kinda mediocre. I mean, just Google Control game. You get a flurry of random shit, like look at this, come on, what is this? At the time of release, SCP also wasn't a well-known IP, but even if it wasn't actually a part of the Foundation, so they couldn't even reference that. And the simple reason to answer why Control didn't get the numbers it deserved? It's marketing. It was abysmal. It was shite. It was fucking horrible.
That is fucking disgusting.
The marketing didn't know how to advertise it. I mean, first off, there really wasn't any advertisement and trailers across any medium, the odd TV and E3 trailer, but that was kinda it. The game didn't know whether to market it as a generic superhero game or some boring survival horror. Not to mention the protagonist Jesse kinda looks very run-of-the-mill with Remedy's weird obsession for protagonists in leather jackets. It was a kind of bland cover, just someone doing the Jurassic World pose. Plus, if you're not familiar with Remedy and their pedigree of games, you would have no idea about how good this relatively small studio is. And what finally cemented the game to go unnoticed was that colossal and hyped games like Modern Warfare, Death Stranding, Sekiro, Fallen Order were all coming out around the same time, which just buried Control underneath, causing Control, an unknown IP, to just fly under the radar and into the ground. Plus, the game's story can be a bit murky at times. A lot is left up to the player's intuition, forcing the players to pay attention to the story and what's going on. So if you just want to play blasé through the game, well, this game ain't for you, Sonny Jim. It was on a relatively small €30 million budget for a game nowadays, and the CEO of Remedy said, "We don't quite require the same huge lifetime numbers as many other games with bigger development budgets. Control continues to sell, which is good. It has a proven high quality and uniqueness and the word of mouth that keeps growing. There is still a big audience out there and hasn't heard yet of Control. These are all factors that support the long-term sales," Virtuala said. It was a perfect storm of poor marketing, multiple games releasing, a generic name and cover, all accumulating in a game that was overlooked unfairly. But for once, something has gone right. Control has gone on to have a cult following, me included, with a very dedicated fan base still trying to piece together the remaining mysteries left in the oldest house, and thankfully Remedy continues to do what Remedy does best, with finally Alan Wake 2 arriving soon, with 2 new Control games, count them 2, co-op spin-off. I was quite worried because they kept saying multiplayer. I was like, Jesus, what the hell is that going to be? But yes, there will be a co-op spin-off multiplayer codenamed Condor and a second main installment. All very hush-hush. And there's no surprise that these new games are probably going to get really weird. And I'm totally fucking here for it. The game never failed to capture the minds of millions. It's just a game that deserves so much more praise and attention. And if you haven't played it, go buy it right now. Look at it. Look how cheap it is. Just try it. There's something for everyone here. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much.